Welcome to Readings in English. If you're here, it means you're ready to immerse yourself in the beauty of the English language through powerful and emotional stories. English is more than just a language. It's a bridge that connects people from all around the world. It's the key to unlocking new opportunities, discovering diverse cultures, and understanding perspectives that might be far from our own. Whether you're learning English as a second language or simply love hearing stories in English, you're in the right place. Through storytelling, we not only improve our vocabulary and comprehension, but also experience the emotional depth and human connections that language can create. And today, we have a deeply moving story that exemplifies this idea. Today's story is called The Forgotten Diary. It's a tale of courage, discovery, and transformation following Rosa, a hardworking woman from a small town who finds an old diary written in English while cleaning a wealthy woman's attic. Though she doesn't know the language, she embarks on a journey to uncover its secrets, discovering a story of betrayal, injustice, and resilience that mirrors her own struggles. As Rosa learns English, she not only deciphers the diary, but also finds her own voice, challenging the power structures in her town and inspiring those around her. This is a story about how learning a language can open doors not just to new worlds, but to strength and self-discovery. So sit back, relax, and join us on this journey as we explore the Forgotten Diary. Let's dive into this emotional and unforgettable tale of learning English together. The sun was barely up as Rosa stepped out of her modest home, adjusting her worn scarf against the morning chill. The town's colonial streets were still quiet, except for the distant clattering of milk carts and the occasional bark of a stray dog. Her routine was the same every day, but something about this morning felt different, a quiet anticipation she couldn't explain. Rosa's first job that day was at the sprawling estate of Marina Andrade, a wealthy widow known for her stern demeanor. The mansion stood like a relic of another era, its ornate iron gates creaking as Rosa pushed them open. She had been cleaning for Marina for years, and though she admired the grandeur of the home, it often felt suffocating. Its high ceilings and endless hallways seemed to mock her simple life. Today, Marina had a specific request. Clean the attic. Rosa hesitated. The attic was rumored to be filled with forgotten relics and thick layers of dust. But Marina's tone left no room for negotiation. Climbing the narrow wooden stairs, Rosa found herself in a dim, musty space lit only by a single bulb. Boxes and trunks were stacked haphazardly, cobwebs hanging like forgotten curtains. Rosa sighed and set to work, her gloved hands carefully brushing away years of neglect. It was under a pile of old newspapers that she found it, a small, leather-bound diary with the corners frayed and the pages yellowed with age. The words to whoever finds this were etched on the cover in elegant handwriting. Rosa's curiosity sparked. She flipped through the pages, but the text was in a language she didn't understand. English. Her heart sank slightly. She had never learned English. The language felt foreign and unreachable, reserved for people far removed from her world. Still, the diary felt important. With a quick glance to ensure she was alone, Rose slipped it into her bag. By the time she returned home at evening, the diary weighed heavily in her thoughts. Sitting at her small kitchen table, with Joel playing music loudly in the next room, Rosa turned the diary over in her hands. What secrets did it hold? Why had it been abandoned in that attic? The questions nagged at her as she placed it carefully in a drawer, deciding she would revisit it later. Rosa woke early the next morning, unable to shake the curiosity gnawing at her. She retrieved the diary from its hiding place and opened it again. The delicate script filled the pages with an urgency she could almost feel. She grabbed her phone, using a translation app to try to decipher the words. The results were fragmented and confusing. The app struggled with the handwriting, and Rose's limited understanding of English didn't help. She frowned at the screen, the first glimmers of frustration creeping in. Still, she wasn't ready to give up. By the time Joe emerged from his room, sleepy-eyed and yawning, Rosa had scribbled notes across several sheets of paper. He raised an eyebrow at the sight of his mother poring over an old book. "What's that?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. "Something I found at work," Rosa replied, hesitating. "It's written in English. I'm trying to understand it," Joe smirked. "You don't even know English." His playful tone stung more than Rosa cared to admit. "That's why I'm learning," she said firmly, reading his gaze. Joe studied her for a moment, then nodded. "If you're serious, you should find someone to help. There's that community center downtown. They have free classes, don't they?" Rosa had heard of the center, but never considered going. Between work and managing the house, her time was always stretched thin. Still, Joe's suggestion lingered in her mind as she went about her day. That evening, Rosa made her way to the community center, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. The classroom was small and bright, filled with a diverse group of students, each with their own reasons for being there. Rosa introduced herself to Lucas, the young and approachable teacher, who welcomed her warmly. By the end of the first session, Rosa felt a spark of hope. It was a long road ahead, but she was determined to uncover the diary's secrets. Back at home, she placed the diary on the kitchen table, running her fingers over its worn cover. "I'll figure you out," she whispered, as if speaking directly to its mysterious author. The next day, as Rosa headed to work, she carried the diary in her bag, its presence a constant reminder of the journey she had just begun. The hum of conversation filled the small classroom at the community center as Rosa settled into her second English lesson. Her notebook was open, its pages already covered with scribbled notes from the first class. Lucas, the instructor, was writing basic phrases on the whiteboard, encouraging the class to repeat after him. "Hello, my name is dot, dot, double quotes. Rosa stumbled over the unfamiliar sounds, but repeated them with determination. She felt a pang of embarrassment as others in the class seemed to grasp the phrases more quickly, but Lucas's reassuring smile kept her going. During the break, Rosa hesitated before approaching Lucas. She held up the diary, which she had brought with her. "Can you help me?" she asked, her limited English forcing her to simplify her request. Lucas looked at the diary with curiosity. "What's this?" "It's dot, dot, dot old English. I want dot, dot." "To understand," Rosa explained, gesturing to the book. Lucas flipped through the pages, his eyes scanning the handwriting. "This is interesting," he said, switching back to Portuguese to explain more fluently. "It seems personal, like a journal." "Where did you find it?" "At work," Rosa replied, hesitant to share too many details. "It was forgotten. I think it has dot, 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 an important story." Lucas nodded. "We can use it as a learning tool. It will be slow, but it's a good way to practice." Encouraged, Rosa began bringing the diary to every lesson, working with Lucas to decode its contents. Each page revealed fragments of a story. The author was a European immigrant who had come to her town during World War II, seeking refuge. His words hinted at a struggle against corruption and betrayal, but stopped short of providing clear details. At home, Joe started noticing the changes in his mother. He saw her practicing basic phrases in front of the mirror and flipping through an English dictionary at the kitchen table. One evening, as she struggled to pronounce a particularly tricky word, Joe joined her. "Here, let me help," he said, surprising Rosa. She looked up, her face lighting up with gratitude. Joe corrected her pronunciation, and they shared a rare moment of connection. "Why are you so interested in this, me?" Joe finally asked, curiosity softening his tone. "Because this diary matters," Rosa replied. "It's like dot, 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 it has something to say. And maybe, by understanding it, I'll learn something about myself too." Joe nodded, though he didn't fully understand. What he did see, however, was his mother's unwavering determination, a quality he hadn't appreciated before. The attic was cold and silent as Rosa climbed the stairs with Marina trailing close behind. Marina had noticed Rosa spending more time than usual in the attic and decided to investigate. "What are you looking for up here, Rosa?" Marina asked, her tone sharp. "Nothing, Donna Marina," Rosa replied, keeping her expression neutral. "Just cleaning." Marina's eyes swept across the cluttered room. Her gaze fell on the now empty spot where Rosa had discovered the diary weeks ago. Suspicion flickered in her eyes, but she said nothing. Back at the community center, Rosa continued her lessons with Lucas. The diary's story was becoming clearer, revealing details about the immigrants' struggles to reclaim stolen property and the corruption that permeated the town's elite at the time. These names, Rosa pointed to a list in the diary, her voice low. "I think dot, 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 they are important people." Lucas nodded, his expression serious. "Some of these families are still influential today. If this story comes to light, it could stir things up. The weight of his word settled heavily on Rosa. She began to realize the magnitude of what she was uncovering. At home, Joe grew increasingly supportive, helping Rosa practice her English and even researching online about historical immigration patterns. However, their small triumphs were overshadowed by growing tension at work. Marina confronted Rosa one morning as she was scrubbing the kitchen tiles. "You've been distracted lately," Marina said, her tone cold, "and don't think I haven't noticed you sneaking around the attic. If there's something you've taken, you'd better return it." Rosa's heart pounded, but she kept her composure. "I haven't taken anything, Donna Marina," she replied carefully. Marina's eyes narrowed. "Good, because if I find out otherwise, you'll regret it." The veiled threat lingered in Rosa's mind as she left work that day. She clutched the diary tightly in her bag, his secrets now feeling both like a treasure and a burden. As Rosa's understanding of English improved, so did her confidence. She began sharing snippets of the diary's story with her classmates, who listened with intrigue. Lucas encouraged her to keep going, but he also warned her to be cautious. "Rosa, you're doing something brave," he said during one of their lessons. "But bravery often comes with a cost." Those words echoed in Rosa's mind as she sat at her kitchen table that night, staring at the diary. She knew Lucas was right. Uncovering the truth could bring complications she wasn't prepared for, but something deep inside her refused to stop. Rosa sat in the small classroom, the diary open before her, its pages worn and delicate. Lucas leaned over, pointing at a particularly faded line of text. "This part mentions land," he said thoughtfully. "Something about it being taken unfairly." Rosa nodded, her comprehension improving with each session. The author, a European immigrant named Elias, had written about purchasing a plot of land upon arriving in the town. But his dreams of building a new life were dashed when influential locals cheated him out of the property. The diary's tone shifted as Elias detailed his futile attempts to seek justice. Rosa felt a pang of recognition in his words, the frustration being silenced by those with more power. That evening, Rosa shared her latest discoveries with Joel, who listened intently. He wrote about the land that was stolen, Rosa explained, but it wasn't just about him. It was about others, to people like him who came here looking for a chance, that were betrayed. Joel frowned, leaning back in his chair. "And those names you mentioned, they're the families who still run things around here, aren't they?" Rosa hesitated, but nodded. "I think so. That's why this story feels so important. People like Elias, people like us deserve to be remembered." Joe's expression softened. "You're doing something big, me. Bigger than I thought." His words filled Rosa with both pride and apprehension. She was determined to continue, but she knew the risks were growing. At work, Marina's behavior became more unpredictable. Rosa caught the sharp glances, the sudden inspections, the subtle but persistent suspicion. She was careful to keep the diary hidden, though the weight of its secrets pressed heavier with each passing day. Meanwhile, her progress in English brought her closer to uncovering Elias's full story. Lucas helped her piece together a key moment. Elias had written about a meeting with a lawyer, a last-ditch attempt to reclaim his land. The lawyer had promised to help but later sided with the powerful families. Elias's heartbreak was palpable in his words, his trust shattered. "Do you think this could still matter today?" Rosa asked Lucas during one of their lessons. Lucas considered her question. History always matters. If these events were hidden, bringing them to light could change the way people see the town and themselves. The diary's revelations began to consume Rosa's thoughts. She started discussing them during breaks at the community center, sharing snippets with classmates who were eager to hear more. Her growing circle of supporters encouraged her to present the story publicly, but Rosa hesitated. She wasn't ready for the spotlight or the potential backlash. At home, Joe noticed her growing anxiety. "You're scared," he said one evening as they sat in the dimly lit kitchen. Rosa sighed. "I'm scared of what this could mean, Joel. If people don't like what they hear, ... If it makes things worse, ... Double quotes." Joel reached across the table, placing a hand on hers. "You've come this far. Don't stop now." Marina's behavior became increasingly confrontational. She called Rosa into the grand dining room one afternoon, her sharp heels clicking against the polished floor. "Rosa, I don't like secrets," Marina began, her voice icy, "and I don't like distractions. If there's something you're hiding, I suggest you come clean now." Rosa met her gaze, her heart pounding, but her expression steady. "I'm just here to work, Donna Marina." Marina leaned closer, her tone dropping. "Make sure that's all you're doing." The tension was unbearable, but Rosa refused to break. She returned to her tasks, feeling Marina's eyes on her the entire time. The following week, Rosa decided to host a small gathering at the community center to share Elias's story. Lucas helped her organize the event, while Joe assisted with creating a simple presentation. Rosa felt a mix of excitement and dread as the evening approached. The room was modest but packed with neighbors, classmates, and a few curious strangers. Rosa stood at the front, the diary clutched in her hands. Her voice trembled as she began to speak, but she found strength in the supportive faces around her. She shared Elias's journey, the land he had fought for, the betrayal he had endured, and the resilience he had shown despite it all. The audience listened intently, some visibly moved by the story. But as Rosa spoke, Marina entered the room, her presence like a sudden gust of cold air. She stood at the back, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. When Rosa finished, the room erupted in murmurs. Some praised her bravery, while others questioned the value of dredging up old wounds. Marina's voice cut through the noise. "This is nonsense," she said, stepping forward. These are lies meant to stir trouble. And you, she pointed at Rosa, have no right to dig into things you don't understand. Rosa stood her ground, her voice steady despite the anger bubbling beneath. This isn't about trouble, Donna Marina. It's about truth. The room fell silent, the tension thick as Rosa and Marina stared each other down. Rosa felt a wave of fear, but also an undeniable sense of purpose. She had come too far to turn back now. The room at the community center buzzed with heated conversations as people processed Rosa's presentation. Marina's sharp rebuttal had cast a shadow over the evening, leaving many unsure of what to believe. Rosa stood at the edge of the room, clutching the diary as people approached her with questions. "I never knew this town had such a history," said one elderly woman, her voice trembling. "Thank you for sharing this. Delia's story need to be heard." Others were less supportive. A middle-aged man shook his head. "You're stirring up problems that should stay buried," he muttered. "What good will this do now?" Rosa felt torn between pride and unease. She had expected resistance, but not the deep division now brewing in the room. The next morning, word of the event spread quickly through the town. Rosa's name became a topic of conversation at bakeries, markets, and church gatherings. Some praised her for her courage, while others criticized her for meddling in the past. At work, the atmosphere grew even more tense. Marina greeted Rosa with a stony silence, her disapproval palpable. The usual tasks, dusting the antique furniture, polishing the ornate mirrors, felt heavier under Marina's watchful eye. By the afternoon, Marina finally broke her silence. "You've caused enough trouble, Rosa," she said, her tone cold and final. "Return the diary, or you'll no longer have a place here." Rosa stared at her employer, the ultimatum hanging heavily in the air. She thought of Joe, her home, the fragile stability she had worked so hard to maintain. But then she thought of Elias's courage, his fight for justice, and she knew what she had to do. "I can't do that, Donna Marina," Rosa replied, her voice steady. "This story isn't just his. It belongs to everyone who's been silenced." Marina's lips tightened into a thin line. "Then you leave me no choice. You're dismissed." Effective immediately, the words struck Rosa like a physical blow. She collected her belongings in silence, her heart pounding as she walked out of the mansion for the last time. At home, Joel was furious when Rosa told him what had happened. "They can't treat you like this, me, after everything you've done for them." "It's not about me," Rosa said quietly. "It's about what's right." Joel paced the small kitchen, his frustration evident. "Then we fight back, we make them listen." Rosa looked at her son, surprised by the fire in his voice. For the first time, she saw a determination in him that mirrored her own. Rosa's dismissal only fueled the community's divided opinions. Some rallied around her, offering words of support and encouragement. Others sided with Marina, dismissing Rosa's actions as reckless and disruptive. Lucas, ever supportive, suggested they take the next step, presenting the diary's story to the town council. If we can get their attention, we might be able to make a real difference, he said. Rosa hesitated. The thought of speaking in such a formal setting terrified her. But she knew Lucas was right. Elias's story deserved to be heard by everyone, not just those who attended her small gathering. The day of the town council meeting arrived, and Rosa stood outside the grand municipal building, clutching the diary tightly. Joe and Lucas stood beside her, offering words of encouragement. "You've got this, me," Joe said, his voice steady. Lucas added, "Remember, you're not just speaking for yourself. You're speaking for Elias and everyone like him." Rosa nodded, drawing strength from their support. As they entered the council chamber, she felt the weight of the room's stairs. The council members sat at a long table, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. When it was Rosa's turn to speak, her hands trembled as she opened the diary. She took a deep breath and began. She spoke of Elias's journey, his hopes for a better life, and the betrayal that shattered those dreams. She read excerpts from the diary, her voice growing steadier with each word. She explained how his story reflected broader injustices that had shaped the town's history. By the time she finished, the room was silent. Some council members looked moved, while others exchanged skeptical glances. Marina, seated in the audience, wore an expression of barely concealed anger. One council member finally spoke. "This is a compelling story, but what do you expect us to do about it now? These events happened decades ago." Rosa met his gaze, her voice firm. "Acknowledging the past is the first step toward change. If we ignore these stories, we allow the same injustices to continue." As Rosa left the meeting, she felt a mix of relief and uncertainty. The council had agreed to review the diary's contents and consider its implications, but their support was far from guaranteed. That night, sitting at the kitchen table with Joe and Lucas, Rosa reflected on everything she had risked and gained. She had lost her job and faced public criticism, but she had also discovered a strength within herself she never knew existed. "You did something incredible today," Lucas said, breaking the silence. Joe nodded. "They can't ignore this now. You've made them listen." Rosa allowed herself a small smile. For the first time, she felt the faint stirrings of hope. The days following the town council meeting were tense. The community remained divided, with opinions about Rosa's actions swirling through every corner of the town. While some hailed her bravery, others saw her as a troublemaker disrupting the town's peace. Rosa tried to keep her focus on the diary. The council's decision to review its contents was a step forward, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Marina wouldn't let things rest. Her suspicions were confirmed when Marina appeared outside Rosa's modest home one afternoon. She stood rigidly on the cracked sidewalk, her gaze hard as Rosa opened the door. "We need to talk," Marina said, Stepping inside without waiting for an invitation, Rosa folded her arms, her voice calm but firm. "What is it, Donna Marina?" Marina's lips pressed into a thin line. "You've gone too far, Rosa. This nonsense about the diary has embarrassed my family." "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "It's not about your family," Rosa replied, her tone steady. "It's about telling the truth." Marina's face reddened. "The truth? And what good will it do? Dragging up the past won't change anything. You're only creating problems for yourself and this town." Rosa's frustration bubbled to the surface. "Problems? The problems were created long before me. I'm just trying to make sure they aren't forgotten." The confrontation escalated, both women refusing to back down. Finally, Marina turned on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Rosa stood in the silence that followed, her heart pounding, but her resolve unshaken. At the community center, Rosa continued working with Lucas to prepare for the council's review. Together, they translated additional passages from the diary, uncovering more about Elias's fight for justice. They also discovered the names of several other families who had faced similar betrayals. "These stories connect to more than just Elias," Lucas said, spreading the translated pages across the table. "This is about an entire group of people who were silenced." Rosa nodded, feeling the weight of their discoveries. "Then we need to make sure they're heard." On the day of the council's final decision, the municipal building was packed. Word of the diary's revelations had spread, drawing an even larger crowd than before. Rosa felt a mixture of nerves and determination. She stood at the front of the chamber, the diary clutched tightly in her hands. The council members listened intently as Rosa and Lucas presented their findings. They highlighted Elias's struggles, the corruption he faced, and the broader implications for the town's history. Marina, seated in the audience, occasionally interjected with sharp comments. "This is hearsay," she snapped at one point. "You're basing all of this on the ramblings of a dead man." Rosa met her gaze. "His words may have been silenced in his time, but they won't be silenced now." The room fell silent, Rosa's statement hanging in the air. After hours of deliberation, the council reached a decision. They announced that the diary's contents would be preserved as part of the town's historical archive, ensuring that Elias's story and the stories of others like him would not be forgotten. The announcement was met with a mix of applause and murmurs. Rosa felt a wave of relief wash over her. Though the fight had been long and difficult, she had achieved what she set out to do, bring Elias's story into the light. In the weeks that followed, the town began to change. Discussions about the diary's revelations prompted deeper conversations about justice, equality, and the importance of acknowledging history. Rosa was invited to speak at local schools and community events, where she shared her journey and encouraged others to seek the truth in their own lives. Her relationship with Joel also grew stronger. He often joined her at events, proudly introducing her as the woman who had changed the town. "You've inspired people, me," he said one evening. "You've inspired me." Rosa smiled, her heart full. Lucas approached Rosa one day with an unexpected suggestion. "You should write your own story," he said. "You've come so far. People would want to hear it." Rosa hesitated. "I'm not a writer, Lucas. You weren't an English speaker either," he replied with a grin. "And look at you now." Inspired, Rosa began working on a memoir, writing in both Portuguese and English. Each word felt like a step forward, a continuation of the journey she had started with Elias's diary. As she sat at her kitchen table one evening, pen in hand, Rosa paused to reflect. The diary had changed her life in ways she never could have imagined. It had taught her the power of truth, the importance of resilience, and the value of finding her voice. Closing the notebook, she glanced at the diary sitting nearby. Its worn cover now felt like an old friend, a reminder of how far she had come. The past, Rosa realized, wasn't just something to remember, it was something to learn from. And with each step forward, she carried its lessons with her, ready to face whatever came next. Rosa sat at a table in the town's modest library, a new and unfamiliar environment for her. She had been invited to speak to a group of local women about her experiences with the diary and how it had shaped her journey. The audience, diverse in age and background, leaned in as Rosa began. "At first, I didn't think I could do it," she admitted, her voice steady but reflective. "Learning English, standing up to people with power, sharing a story I barely understood myself, it all seemed impossible." She paused, looking around the room. "But what I've learned is that stories have power. They connect us, even across time and language. And if we have the courage to share them, they can change everything." The audience erupted into applause, many women visibly moved. Some approached Rosa afterward, thanking her for inspiring them to face their own challenges. Back at home, Rosa returned to her kitchen table, the center of so many quiet moments of determination. Joe sat across from her, reviewing the draft of her memoir. "This is good, me," he said, his tone genuine. "I think people will really connect with it." Rosa smiled, her cheeks warming. "You've been my biggest supporter, Joe." "Thank you." Joe shrugged but grinned. "You've taught me a lot, about courage, about not giving up. I think I needed to see that their bond, once strained, had transformed into a partnership of mutual respect and pride." As weeks turned into months, the impact of Rosa's actions became more evident. The diary was officially displayed at the town's historical archive alongside a plaque commemorating Elias and others who had faced similar injustices. Local students visited the exhibit, learning not only about the town's history, but also about the importance of perseverance and truth. Rosa's memoir also began gaining attention. Lucas had helped her self-publish the book, and it quickly became a source of inspiration for people in her community and beyond. Rosa was invited to speak at events in neighboring towns where she shared her journey and encouraged others to pursue their own truths. One evening, Rosa received a letter from a woman in another town who had read her memoir. The letter, written in a careful but heartfelt English, spoke of the woman's struggles to stand up against injustices in her own life. "You've shown me that it's never too late to find your voice," the letter concluded. Rosa held the letter to her chest, her eyes filling with tears. She realized that her journey, which had begun with a simple act of picking up an old diary, had grown into something far greater. Years later, Rosa stood at the opening ceremony of a new community center named in honor of Elias and the others whose stories had been uncovered. The center focused on providing resources for education and storytelling, ensuring that voices like Elias's and Rosa's would never be silenced again. Joe, now a young man with ambitions of his own, stood by her side. "You started all this," he said, his pride evident. "No," Rosa replied, smiling. "It started with Elias. I just listened." The ceremony ended with Rosa reading a passage from her memoir. Her voice, once hesitant and unsure, now carried strength and conviction. As the audience applauded, Rosa looked around the bustling community center, filled with people eager to share their own stories. The weight of the past had transformed into a bridge to the future, and Rosa felt a deep sense of peace. The diary that had once been forgotten now lived on, not just in archives, but in the hearts of those it had touched. And Rosa, once a quiet woman confined by routine, had become a symbol of resilience, courage, and the enduring power of stories.